Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about Brexit, about this disaster that is Brexit, that everyone can now see as a disaster, this reckless, stupid, and totally irrational and nonsensical idea we had 6 years ago that if we left the EU, we would be able to pursue trade deals with countries all over the world that were desperate to deal with us, and that also would be able to stop foreigners coming in and working here and using the NHS. And I think it's, as I say, I think it's now perfectly clear to everyone that it's a disaster, and that the damage is really profound and it's going to be very long lasting. I was just thinking about the history of Brexit, how did it all happen and so on. I did think of this as a way of describing it. Imagine you're on a coach. You've got a coach full of people. They're all going on holiday and they're going down the motorway in the middle lane at 70 miles an hour, and everybody's comfortable, everybody's enjoying the scenery and so on. Everything's going fine, and everybody's happy and looking forward to the future, to their holiday. And after a while, some sort of spivvy guy at the front of the bus gets up, a sort of a bookmaker type, and he gets up and starts telling everybody, this is the wrong way. This is the wrong way. We shouldn't be going this way. I know a much better route. We should go off the motorway. I know a better route, and it'll go to a much better destination. And he's so forceful with it. He keeps telling everybody. And so after a while, people start saying, well, maybe he's got a point. Maybe he's got a point. And then another guy gets up, a sort of a slightly overweight guy with scruffy hair called Johnson. He just tells jokes. He just jokes. Because all he really wants to do is to be the bus driver. He wants to drive the bus. He's not interested in anything else, so he'll say anything. So he starts saying, yeah, we should go off. We should turn off. I know a better route as well. Yes, we should definitely leave the motorway. So after a while, the driver, this is a gentleman, Mr. Cameron, he's called, he addresses the passengers and he says, listen, everybody wants to carry on down the motorway where we're going now. Well, we know where we're going. We know we'll get there and so on. Everyone wants to carry on this route. Put your hands up. 48 people put their hands up. And then he says, everybody who wants to leave the motorway and go on a different route where we don't know what the route is going to be like, we don't know what the road's going to be like, we don't know where we're going to end up, put your hands up. 52 people put their hands up. So Mr. Cameron, he says, well, that's it. I'm off. I'm not driving the bus any longer. So he gets off. So the passengers say, we need to get a new driver now. So they look around and say, oh, Mrs. May, she worked in the library and she's read a few books about geography and stuff, so maybe we'll get her to drive. So she took over driving. They get to the next exit and they turn off, and instead of going previously 70 miles an hour down the motorway in the middle lane, they're now suddenly on a windy road, and it's 30, 40 miles an hour and a few potholes and so on. And she's driving, and the people behind are all getting a bit fed up with her driving, so they say, we don't like you to drive anymore because you're not driving very well. And then Mr. Johnson jumps up. He says, I can drive the bus. And everybody says, oh, give him a chance. So he gets in the driver's seat, and he's got a bottle of beer in his pocket, and he's making jokes and laughing. He's swerving all over the road. He's hitting this side and that side, in the ditch, out the ditch, and all the rest of it. And after a while, the passengers say, this is not really what we wanted. Let's get somebody else to drive. So they say, what about the dinner lady, Miss Truss? Why give her a go driving the bus? So she says, oh yes, I'm very good at driving buses. I'm really, really, really good at driving buses. So she gets in the seat, and her friend Mr. Kwarteng is with her. He's taking a photograph while she's driving. So she starts the engine up, and she goes straight into the nearest tree, smashes all the suspension. So the bus is really badly damaged now. So everybody says, oh, for goodness sake, get rid of her. And so they then have to find another driver. So they say, well, what do we need? We need some a bit steady Eddie, don't we? Let's get Mr. Sunak, the accountant. So he comes along now. He's very good on statistics and so on. He's been measuring the tire pressures, and he's been measuring the oil pressure and petrol consumption, all that sort of thing all along. So he comes on with his spreadsheet on his lap, and he's driving the bus along. By this time, the road's got really rough. It's getting rough. It's sort of become a track now, and it's sort of muddy, and the bus has been knocked about so much that the bits falling off it, the suspension's going, the smoke came out the engine, and all the rest of it. And Mr. Sunak's driving along. And beside him, there's a relief driver who really wants to take over. He wants to drive as well. Now, Mr. Sunak, he wanted to take this new route. He realised pretty early on that this route was going to go nowhere, and it was a mistake and so on. But anyway, he's got to keep going because all his bosses are sat behind him, and he doesn't want them to sack him. So he's got to just keep going and pretend he thinks he's doing the right thing. Beside him is Mr. Starmer, the relief driver, who wants to have a go, but he can't until Mr. Sunak goes. But Mr. Starmer, he also wants to keep on this road. He wants to keep going. And the road now it's just rocks in front of it, and he wants to, because some of the people in the back chose to leave the motorway, and therefore you must go on the route that they've chosen. By this stage, of the 52 passengers who voted to leave the motorway, half of them have realised it's madness, and the other half, including a group at the back who are mentally handicapped, they also think it's very good. They think it's great fun. The smoke's coming out the engine and the bits are falling off and all the rest of them bumping about. They think it's terrific. And so we have Mr. Sunak driving. He doesn't know anything about driving buses, absolutely useless. And then you've got Mr. Starmer waiting to take over and make a great success of it. He says that he'll make a huge success, and when they get to these rocks, it'll be even better than me on the motorway. And that's really where we are now, isn't it? And nobody will get up and say, this is madness. This route is leading us to ruin. There is no possibility of this route being successful. And the idea that Sunak might make a success of it is also utterly fanciful. It's absurd. He's not going to make a success of it. He'll be as much of a failure as his four predecessors. Because Brexit is something you cannot make a success of. You cannot make a success of, to mix metaphors, a sinking ship. And I'll tell you something about Sunak, about his qualifications and so on, because he is obviously completely out of his depth, and he's completely under the control of the right wing of the Tory party. Now, he became very popular because he was a chancellor at a time we had the pandemic, and he was giving away a lot of money. He gave away lots and lots of money. Previous to that, he was elected to Parliament the first time in 2015, and he'd only had one small minister post, I think, a sort of a junior minister in the local government department, and then he went to the Treasury, and that's where he spent the rest of his time when he ended up as chancellor. Now, during the pandemic, he did one very good thing, which was furlough, which saved a lot of jobs, saved a lot of businesses and so on. It was a brilliant idea. But he was also responsible for the bounce-back loans. Now, the bounce-back loan was like saying to every fraudster in the country, look, just if you want £50,000, just go on the website and claim it and you get it. And the way it worked was that if you had a business, or you didn't have a business for that matter, all you had to do was go to the government website. You had to put in the name of your business, the name of your company. And if you hadn't got a company, all you had to do was go to Companies House and form a company. It would cost you £12, do it online. You go back, put in the name of this new company you've just formed, and they would then ask you how much your turnover was the previous year, how many sales, what your sales were. And you put in £250,000. The reason you put that in is because you could claim 20% of your last year's turnover. So you could then claim a loan of £50,000. And then you put in your bank details, and 2 days later, 3 days later, the money was in your bank account. No checks, no questions, whether the business existed or not, whether you existed or not, no checks at all. And as a result of that, so much fraud took place that very shortly, I mean, not long after the end of the pandemic, it was announced that the Treasury had written off £5 billion in fraudulent loans. I mean, this is a staggering sloppiness. The fact that no checks were put in, I mean, it was Sunak's scheme. But nobody mentions there's all just it doesn't really matter because it's our money anyway, it's the taxpayers' money. And then he was responsible for the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, wasn't he? Which he said was responsible for quite a lot of unnecessary deaths as a result of people going out when they probably shouldn't have done. Now, since he's become Prime Minister, he's been Prime Minister for 2 weeks, what's he done? First announcement was that he wasn't going to go to COP27. It was a very, very stupid announcement. And it wasn't until a few days later Johnson suddenly thought it was really, really, really smart if he went, and he announced he was going. And then, of course, Sunak thought he would look silly if he didn't go, so now he's going. And his other decision, of course, was, which I talked about a lot last week, was his decision to appoint and to support the utterly dreadful Sue Ellen Braverman. So he's not really a star who's going to save the nation, I don't think. And I think, I'm absolutely certain he's going to fail just as much as everybody else has failed before him. And of course, he's totally under control of the right wing of the Conservative Party. And if you look at where we are now, I mean, the situation is pretty grave, and I think we all sense it, don't we? You know, when you go out, when you talk to people, it's like living in a country where we know we're going to go to war. We don't know quite when it's going to happen. We don't know quite how bad it's going to be, but we know it's going to be pretty terrible. We all know there's going to be an economic catastrophe coming. And when you look around at the moment and you look at how prices are going up, you look at the price of food, you look at the price of petrol, you look at the price of gas and electricity, and that's being artificially held down until, well, for another 6 months, and then it's going to go through the roof anyway. You look at taxes are going up. We know they're going to go up. And so everybody is suffering from having less and less money. Wages are going up very, very slowly, if at all. And so everyone is being squeezed. A lot of people are getting into debt, which they're not going to be able to pay. There's terrific stress, and there's going to be all sorts of mental health issues coming. A lot of people are going to lose their homes because they're not going to be able to afford to pay their mortgages or the rents or whatever. I mean, it is really, really terrifying, the prospects are. And there is something about the fact that prices are going up, it's fairly obvious, but if you think about it, if prices do go up, people have got less or no money left to spend at the end of it. So going to the pub, going to the restaurant and buying some new clothes or buying a new car or decorating the houses, all those things are going to be sacrificed. And the result of that is that all those businesses that provide all those things, the pubs, the restaurants and the shops and so on, are all going to be squeezed. A lot of them are on the edge anyway. And so a lot of these businesses are going to go bust. And when a business goes bust, all the businesses that supply that business also suffer. And so you get into this spiral of things getting worse and worse and worse, more and more businesses being unable to manage, to cope, to keep going. And as I say, we have interest rates, the highest interest rates we've had for 14 years, complete lack of any likelihood or any possibility of there being any economic growth. And you look at the public services, you look at the NHS, it's in a terrible state. And you look at education, and you look at all public services are all being squeezed, and they're going to be squeezed more and more as time goes by. And on top of everything else, the Bank of England has just put interest rates up. So that is going to make things even worse, because anybody's got a loan, got a mortgage, is going to be paying more. And that's going to cause further damage to the economy. And you end up with things like food banks and threats of power cuts. And people opening warm centres. I mean, this is an advanced company. We're supposed to be the sixth biggest economy in the world, sixth richest economy in the world in 2022. And we're talking about food banks. Well, we're not talking about food banks. There are thousands of food banks. There are people who are having to queue up each week at a food bank to get food. And there are children going hungry. And when you think of it, children are our future, but if children go to school and they're hungry, they're not going to learn. And so, the consequences of all this collapse in the economy is really, really serious. And yet the government has absolutely no idea apart from talking about growth. We're going for growth. I mean, this is insane. You can't grow when your economy is declining as ours is. It's absolutely impossible. And anyone now even thinking of starting a business would have to be crazy. I mean, who's going to start a business now? When you look around you and you see, I mean, you might if you're going to be an auctioneer or you're going to be what do you call it, one of these liquidators or something. But I mean, no one in their right mind to start a business now. And we've cut off. I mean, if you're thinking of starting a business, you're going to build a business. I mean, if it's one where you're producing some goods or wholesaling some goods or whatever, and you want to expand your market, I mean, your market is limited to the UK now. You can't export to to the EU because we've put two fingers up to them. We've volunteered to go behind this massive wall of bureaucracy so that it's very difficult to deal with the EU, and small and medium-sized companies cannot deal with the EU. And you have to wonder really where this will end. And the government, of course, will immediately say, well, it's all this decline, this collapse of 15% of our sales to the exports to the EU, 100 million pounds worth of exports a year to the EU. We're no longer doing. They'll say it's nothing to do with Brexit. Nothing to do. You can't mention Brexit. Michael Gove thinks it was an outstanding success. No, you can't. It's nothing to do with Brexit. It's all to do with the pandemic, and it's to do with Vladimir Putin. And it's to do with Labour government, last Labour government, and the next Labour government as well, I think. And they haven't started talking about the position of the stars yet, but I'm sure they're going to come up with that. And they'll tell you it's worse everywhere else. Other places are just as bad everywhere. Everyone's suffering. And I think until someone, as I said before, until someone stands up and says, look, this is madness what we're doing. We are so handicapped now being out of the EU. Unless and until someone says we must turn around and start talking to the EU about some sort of agreement whereby we can sell them more goods and we can buy more goods and we can somehow or other find a way of reducing just some of the bureaucracy. Until that happens, this is just going to go on getting worse and worse and worse. And it's all very, very depressing. And on top of everything else, it's this loss of prestige. We were such a well-respected country for such a long time. Well, forever. We had such a glorious history in many ways. I know we did lots of bad things as well, but we had a glorious history. We were a really well-respected country. Our institutions were well-respected. The city and our rule of law and so on was all well-respected. And that's all gone. It's completely down. We are a worldwide laughingstock. We even had last week the Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, laughing at us, mocking us about being like a madhouse. It's not good. It's not good. It's not good for morale. And this was all, what was it all for? In order to be able to get trade deals with new countries all over the world who were just queuing up to do business with us and would far and exceed the amount of business we were doing with the EU. And it was also about stopping immigrants coming to this country. We don't want foreigners, especially people from the EU. And look at the result of that. Look at the shortages of labour. It's chronic. And I did just want to say a couple of words about immigration. I watched Suella Braverman's statement in the House of Commons the other day, and the one where she was talking about invasion and so on, and you realise what a truly, truly dreadful, horrible woman she is. And behind her, there weren't many Tories supporting her because she's obviously considered pretty toxic at the moment. I don't think she's going to last very long. But anyway, of those that got up, there were really sort of two classes of backbench Tory MP. The first class was sort of all these people who probably never expected to get elected, people like those who were in the red wall seats and so on. And I must say it was quite outstanding how second-rate these people are. They stand up and they've got a little bit of paper and they read out this miserable question. They can't even read straight. And I just thought, what a second-rate load of non-entities. And the rest of them were just the usual suspects you would expect, got off one after the other, these bigoted, xenophobic, small-minded, nasty little Englanders who all think that Suella Braverman is doing a great job by being harshed on these immigrants who we should all really, frankly, we should just deport them all to wherever we'll take them. And on the subject of these immigrants, I just wanted to say this, that if you come from Iran or you come from Iraq or you come from, Eritrea or Afghanistan, if you're going to come to the UK, you probably speak English, so you're probably quite well educated. You're going to need a certain amount of intelligence to perform, to go through that arduous journey. You need, above all, a lot of determination, a lot of ambition. You really want to do better. You really are determined to do better. So you go through this terrible journey to get to the UK, and the risk of going across in the little boats and so on. Incidentally, and I'm excluding the Albanians, that's another issue. But you get to this country, and you don't get off the boat and say, can I have a council house, please, and where do I start drawing benefits? You don't. What you want to do is you want to start a business. You want to work. You want to make some money, and you're quite happy probably to share a room with 5 other people, and because you can share the rent, because you could save a bit. All you want to do is to get on. And these people who've got this drive, this determination, this ambition to go through these terrible journeys to get here, I mean, these people, for us, especially with our economy as it is, they're gold. Because they're just going to go out and work. And yet what do? We stick them in these centres for 405 days on average. And people come from those countries I've just mentioned, they're going to get asylum anyway. We're never going to send any of them back there. And yet, somehow or other, they have to be kept for more than a year, sitting around doing nothing, whilst we're desperate for workers. These guys would do anything, these people. They're mostly men. But no, we don't. We don't want them here. We want to find ways of getting rid of them. As Braverman wants, she wants to send them to Paraguay and Peru, I think, because Rwanda wasn't working out too well. I don't know why she doesn't try Antarctica. They'll never come back from there. And it's interesting, on the point of how determined these people are and how likely they are to be successful. I mean, we're forever hearing about people say they turned up as asylum seekers, and then they're now sort of neurosurgeons and professors and things. But I saw a statistic the other day that in America, of the 500, the Fortune 500. Top companies, that's the biggest 500 companies in America, 45% of those companies were started by immigrants or children of immigrants. But we don't want those sort of people here. We want to do it all ourselves, don't we? We don't want them taking our jobs. We don't want them coming here and digging our potatoes and working in our care homes and working in our abattoirs. No, we don't want them, especially if they come from the EU. And so this is the madness we're living with, this utter madness. It has to come to an end. I hope it'll come to an end before the whole economy completely collapses, because that's what's likely to happen if somebody doesn't start trying to row back a bit. But frankly, right now, there's precious little sign of that happening. Next week, I'm doing a joint video with my very good friend Rob Groves of Truth to Power, who I'm sure many of you know. We're just going to talk, no doubt, about Brexit and about politics. If there's anything that you would like us to discuss, please just put a note in the comments below, and we'll try to discuss it. Finally, thank you for everyone who's bought my little book, my short history, a satirical history of Brexit, and it's still available. My website is ml44.com, and if you haven't already subscribed and you wouldn't mind doing so, I'd be very grateful. And so until next time, bye for now.